Morgen.
Hello, good morning, Ty.
Guten Morgen.
We're complete. We're complete now. Yeah, I would say let's start. Let's start today's session. A warm welcome to everyone from the Israel Economic and Trade Mission in Berlin. We are very happy to have a great audience today from Germany and from Israel, of course, but also from other European countries and even further abroad. My name is Simon Steffgen. I work as a trade officer here, where I'm responsible for the construction tech as well as the property technology, among other sectors. Before we get started with today's not only exciting but also highly relevant topic, I will shortly introduce our office as well as our great partners. As you see behind me, we are quite a group of people that made today's event possible, and it has been a great pleasure to have all the discussions during the preparation phase. The Israeli Economic and Trade Mission is the outer branch of the Israeli Ministry of Economy and Industry in Jerusalem. We are part of a worldwide network of 45 trade missions, and we help Israeli companies enter the local markets and spread the word of Israeli innovation in all sectors. We also offer scouting for Israeli innovation for any German company interested. We deliver these services for free as we are a publicly funded institution. So please feel free to approach us anytime. With some of you in the audience, we are in continuous discussion already, and we are very happy about that. Before introducing today's agenda, let me thank our partners. First of all, our dear colleagues from the Israel Export Institute, namely Hila Lipman and Yuval Yerushalmi. It's always a pleasure to work with you. A big thank you as well to Tzachi Flato from ConTech Israel for moderating the second panel today and being part of the event. Nice to have you here, Tzachi. Our two speakers, Maya and Hoang, I will introduce in a second. Thank you as well for being here today. What can you expect in the next 1.5 hours? After a crisp keynote by Maya Treitenberg, we will listen to our first short panel featuring the companies Greenvibe Sensing and Econcrete, moderated by Hila. Then we're going to listen to a short presentation by Hoang on his company Alcemy and the German construction tech ecosystem, as well as regulatory challenges a young startup as theirs is facing here. After the presentation, there will be time for a short discussion. In the second panel, we will listen to the companies StructurePal and FoldStruct, moderated by Tzachi Flato, head of ConTech Israel. In the end, there will be time for questions. Please keep in mind that this event can only be a teaser and kickoff. There will be many questions unanswered. And we will, of course, be more than happy to engage and initiate follow-up talks to drill down and connect you to the companies. Some of you mentioned already that you would like to meet one of the presenting companies. We'll approach you today and arrange everything for that. And please also don't hesitate with feedback after the event. We're always happy to hear your thoughts and ideas, and we are always happy to connect. All company presentations will be provided in a follow-up email, and we'll also have a recording afterwards. Before starting with the keynote and introduction of Maya, I would now like to hand over to Esther Elias, Commercial Consul at the Israel Economic and Trade Mission here in Berlin, for some welcoming words.
Thank you, Simon. Boker Tov and Guten Morgen, everybody. Just after the great introduction made by Simon, and thank you very much for hosting this event, we wanted to give you a small background of why did we choose this topic this time and why are we focusing on the construction. So two main reasons were taken under consideration for this event today. The first one would be that, as you know, there is a new government in Germany since December. And one of the main topics that are on the agenda are climate change and sustainability. And obviously everything is affected by construction. So this was one of the great reasons why we choose to do the event today, because we see the great needs from the German side and the great solutions that the Israeli construction tech sector can bring. And I think that Maya will elaborate about that. And the second reason was the resource pass in Germany. For those of you who doesn't know, it's a new legislation in Germany that basically supposed to focus overall on the CO2 footprint on building, meaning the government will push forward to implement sustainable solutions for construction. And even though in the beginning it will be privileged to do that, meaning it's not going to be mandatory, through the year, it's going to be mandatory with incentive from the government. Also, I think that our speaker, Hoang, is going to elaborate about that. And we will also send you an article after the event in the summary email with all the information about these legislations. And I don't want to prolong my introduction. So Simon, back to you.
Thank you very much, Esther. And yeah, it's now a pleasure to introduce to you Maya Treitenberg. She is senior consultant and PropTech expert at Deloitte Catalyst in Israel. And we are very much looking forward to your keynote. And it's a great pleasure to have you. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm just going to upload my presentation. Just a second. Everyone seeing it okay? Okay, I guess this is a yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm very excited to be here today and to present to you the construction tech and prop tech ecosystem in Israel. But before we dive into the technologies and what we're seeing out here in the ecosystem, it's important to see where it's from and why Israel, what's so important, exciting about Israel and technology in general. What's the main challenges that the construction industry in Israel has, climate change in Israel as well, and then we're going to get a glimpse of the prop tech and construction tech ecosystem in Israel. So Israel at a glance, it was established 73 years ago, a very, very small country. As you see, we're now 0.1% of the world's population. We're very tiny compared to the US, as you can see. So it turns out that we are a startup nation. We're a leading startup ecosystem in the world by far in terms of numbers and absolute numbers. So we have the highest number of startups per capita today, highest R&D expenditures. We're ranked number 3 in NASDAQ listed tech companies in the world. We're the first entrepreneurial nation. We're ranked 7 leading ecosystem in the world, as you can see on the right here. The Silicon Valley is the first. So we are the startup nation, a small country, but have a lot of innovation inside that is getting a huge traction worldwide. And there's a few building blocks, we can say, why have we become the startup nation that really contributed to us having all these technologies and traction. So as you can see, it's from, having top-rated universities, heavily investing in defense technologies and in the industry in Israel in general, having a massive Russian immigration in the 90s where we doubled the amount of engineers and scientists in the industry, and even having a young population in a culture that embraces failure. And failure is an option in Israel, which contributes tremendously to us having a lot of innovations and startups in Israel. And what's important to note about it is that Israel is used to dealing with its biggest issues and challenges through innovation. And there's a few examples or notable examples that you can see how we have dealt with our challenges with innovation. The first one is water. We're a country with lacking of water resources in Israel. We have one small water sea, the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on water, that was shrinking. And we were supposed to be in a huge problem this year today. And we turned out to be one of the largest water powers in the world with different kinds of technologies, from desalination to drip technology that we're selling in the world, And today we are out of the woods. We don't have a water problem in Israel. So this is really a good example of how we took this challenge, we brought in innovation, and now we're really stepping our game inside. The second thing is Iron Drone, known in Hebrew as Kipat Bozel. So it's an exceptional, sophisticated defense system against missile coming out of Gaza or from the north. It turned out to be very successful on protecting our people during conflicts that we have in Israel. So when we have challenge, we have innovation. And we're seeing this in many, many different industries, as I said. So before we explore specifically on a deep dive on the construction tech ecosystem and technology, it's important to see which challenges are what challenges is the construction industry facing today, because this will give us a little hint of where the technology in Israel is thriving in the areas. So the main challenges the construction industry in Israel is facing can be divided, I think, into three main interesting ones. Some of them are not unique to Israel, but rather we're just very bad at them, more than the world. So it's important to note them. So the first one is safety, obviously. Safety is one of the biggest issues in the world, in the construction industry in general, but in Israel, we're bad at it. As you can see, we're ranked number 3 in the OECD countries in construction sites fatalities. Just in 2021, over 30 workers have died on construction sites. We're getting bad at it. This is a very big issue in Israel that needs to be solved and has, potential for innovation inside. The second challenge is the workers. Workers in Israel are relying heavily, the industry itself is relying heavily on foreign labor coming into Israel. Most of them are Palestinians coming from the territories. As you can see, it's almost half of the workers in Israel. And this is a problem when you take into consideration the geopolitical situation in Israel, where we have a lot of conflict in Israel. And sometimes we have to close the borders, and the workers have to go through a lot until they get into Israel and get their approval. And sometimes the next day they cannot return. You have limited access on training the workers. So in Israel, workers in construction industry really have a big, big, big challenge and problem while the construction process itself. But I think one of the most interesting challenges of the industry is facing in the next couple of years is not from the immediate industry itself. It wasn't grown in the industry like the workers or safety challenges, but rather, it's a cultural phenomenon in Israel that has a huge effect on the industry and what it's facing in the next couple of years, and that growth population in Israel. Israel is actually by far has the highest population growth of all developing countries. In fact, it grew twice as fast than the average OECD countries, and it's way above countries like India or Bangladesh, which is super surprising when you think about it. The fertility rate in Israel is 3.1 per woman. We bring children, we bring them a lot. And it's not only because we have different kind of societies, as you can imagine in Israel, it's known to be a population overall phenomenon. And what does that mean is that we need to build a large number of buildings in Israel, almost doubling what we have today in the next 15 years. So we have to build fast to meet the demand. And this was okay or not a huge problem if we were a country like Canada, where we had an endless land to build in. But in Israel, we have a lack of land. We have 21,000 kilometers as a country, but more than 60% of it is a desert. So we need to build fast. We don't have where, and we don't have good workers or trained workers enough to do so. So in general, you can see the industry is facing a huge challenge that will push them towards something, and they cannot do something else without innovation to be successful and to overcome these challenges. But when this is only local, right? This is local challenges in Israel. Some of them are global, but these are local challenges. What happens when we look at the most global or immediate challenge the whole world is facing, and that's climate change. So as you can imagine, Israel was established 70 years ago, but we were dealing with survival most of the time. We had a lot of challenges. We still have a lot of challenges. We're an island inside the Middle East, so we have a lot of challenges that we had to deal with. So climate change was not the immediate concern the government had on Israel. We really pushed it aside, and we didn't do a lot to overcome this big challenge. But it's not like we're not getting effects from the global warming. We're a hot spot here in the Middle East. We almost doubled them at the raise in temperature that we're seeing in the global warming in general. So Israel is dealing with it, and we're feeling it particularly big in Israel. So, but the past 3 years, Israel has done a few steps towards stepping into the game, you can say, to try to combat with this global threat that we're having. So I brought you a few examples. The first one is Glasgow 2021. Israel was participated, of course, and set up very good goals for it, and ambition goals, you can say, to reduce emissions. The Green Building Council and standards, in Israel was established 16 years ago as a voluntary basis start. It's particularly new compared to other standards in the world like LEED or BREEAM. So the Israeli one was the latest, and it started completely voluntary, but actually next month, March 2022, it's going to be mandatory completely in the country for all new buildings in Israel. In 2020, also, we saw that 40% of all buildings and approvals met that standard requirement. So this is a huge change and a very important milestone that the construction industry is facing today and need to face, and take into consideration innovation and change in building methods to meet this green building standard that now is mandatory in Israel. And the third thing is climate tech in Israel. So as I said before, we're used to dealing with challenge through innovation. So where we have challenge, we're probably going to have really good innovation and a very strong ecosystem. And actually, climate tech is very a strong ecosystem in Israel. Just in the past year, in 2021, $2.2 billion were thrown in the companies in investments. That's 50% more than the year before. It's companies and industries like food tech and agri-tech and energy tech that are thriving in climate tech in Israel. So now that we understood a little bit what challenges the industry is facing in Israel, the construction industry, we can only imagine like how technology will solve and in which path they will pick in the construction tech in Israel. So it's a good place to be now to explore and go a deep dive on the different technologies that Israel has in the construction and prop tech area in Israel. So just as an overview of this ecosystem, it's a booming ecosystem in Israel, home for over 250 companies today, focusing on disruptive technologies in the construction and prop tech in Israel. About half is construction tech, half is prop tech. It grew tremendously in the past few years. You can see that this year, 2021, was a record-breaking year in terms of investments. The companies raised over $500 million. That is, it took us before 5 years to reach that total number in investments. So the industry is growing. It's growing much more mature companies. You can see companies that now are raising B rounds, C rounds, giving their solutions worldwide. Still, most of the companies in Israel are early stage, about 60%, but we are having a lot of companies stepping up their game and being a real potential in the market, in the global market. Of course, as you can see, there's many multinationals in Israel that are seeking for innovation in that space in Israel, like JLL and Autodesk and Enel. So we are having companies coming into Israel trying to look for innovation in this space. Now, when we talk about trends that we're seeing in the construction tech and prop tech ecosystem, we're basically where we have most solutions that we can see, and that the world is really seeking for them, and they have most potential to succeed. So in real estate, we're seeing two main trends. One of them is everything that has to do with tenant experience. So smart buildings and entries for the buildings, access to the buildings, managing it, community service for the tenants in the building. So many technologies there that are getting traction in Israel, and a lot of companies and startups that we're seeing in that space. The second trend is property management. Obviously, this is a huge global trend that we're seeing in PropTech in general. It's everything that has to do with the building's maintenance, the sensors, the collaboration platforms, indoor management, location insights of the building. Many of the energy tech companies in PropTech are in this sector. So this is a very big section in Israel with a lot of different startups offering their solution. In construction, we have also two trends that are getting traction. One of them is site management. We obviously have to build fast, build more efficient, and we have to start, managing the sites in a more effective way. So we have a lot of companies there trying to give their solutions, from inspection and monitoring the progress of the project to digital twins of the construction sites, all of them trying to make the site management more easy and siteless. And another trend that we're seeing is robotics and automation. So we need to build fast, as I said before, and we need things to be more automated and more sleek in the building industry. So it's technologies like augmented reality platforms, IoT devices, robots itself that enhance the efficiency on the site. Many companies there in Israel also are gaining traction in technology. So just in the past month, we published at Deloitte our latest report on construction tech and real estate in general. We mapped out trends that we're seeing out there, but we have mapped the ecosystem in Israel with the different kinds of technologies. We were very excited to do this report together with ConTech and Union Tech and Tidhar in Israel. So as you can see, we mapped out the different solutions that we're seeing and the different subsectors. So in construction tech, obviously, you're going to hear today, I'm very excited to hear today the companies that we brought to this conference, but we're seeing different kinds of solutions. Some of them are very relevant for sustainability in general, and advanced materials and different building methods that we're seeing. Automation, obviously, everything that makes the industry much more efficient will make it a little more sustainable, planning and design, and so on and so forth. In PropTech, we're seeing, as I mentioned before, many companies in property management, in smart buildings, and real estate marketing tools. So all of them are very strong examples of the Israeli startup scene in this area. So I think I'm at our time, and hopefully you enjoyed and learned a little bit about the ecosystem.
Great, thank you very much, Maya, for these insights on the situation in Israel and how the startup nation is reacting. Very insightful. Without further ado, we head on to our first panel. To our audience, please feel free to type questions in the chat. We'll have time. We'll have time to talk about them later. We can connect you to each other to have a follow-up. Yeah, so please engage in the chat, introduce yourself, and yeah, we are happy to hear your questions. So now I would like to hand over to Hila. Please, Hila, the floor is yours, and we're very excited to hear the technologies that Maya mentioned in the first place.
Thank you, Simon. Hi, everyone, and good morning. My name is Hila Lipman, and I'm the head of the CleanTech, ConTech, and PropTech sector in Israeli Export Institute. Just a few words for those who are not familiar with us. We are a non-profit, semi-governmental organization that assists Israeli startups to seek business opportunities all over the world in over 10 different industries, such as energy, agri-tech, of course, ConTech, cyber, medical, and much more. So I would like to open our panel now, and I would like to shortly introduce you to Michal Judovits, business development from Econcrete company, and Roee Reshef, CEO and co-founder in Greenvibe Sensing. So good morning to you, guys.
Hi, Hila, good morning.
Good morning.
So first of all, you're welcome to start your pitch, of course. Michal, be my guest to start.
All right, so let me share my screen. All right, I apologize in advance. There is some construction going on here just to celebrate this construction day. So if there is some noise, I do apologize in advance. So I'm Michal and I'm representing Econcrete, and we bring concrete to life. The company has been established a decade ago by two doctors of marine biology in order to tackle word challenge. The slides are not working properly. Stay with me. All right, so with about half of the world population residing along the coastline and with the enforced by climate instability and the increase of storm, then we're seeing an accelerated process of coastal hardening, which means a lot of concrete structure. In fact, 70% of all of the coast and marine infrastructures are concrete-based. Concrete is a rather harsh material in the marine environment. And typically those structures are dominated by invasive species and really burdened the ecosystem. Today, we are the only ecological concrete technology which complies with construction industry standards. That allows us to reserve beautiful and highly protective natural coastline ecosystem like oysters and reefs and corals and mangroves, while not making any compromise on structural functionality, stability, and strength. In order to reserve the natural lines of defense for the coastline, Econcrete came up with a biomimic win-win solution to bring concrete to life. The technology is based on three elements that work together in synergy. The material composition. We have developed an admix component that represents about 10% of the cementitious materials of the concrete that neutralize the negative effects of the concrete on the marine life. Then we were looking at the surface complexity. What you're seeing on the right, that's a texture that is, when you're thinking concrete, you're thinking about something very smooth, very straight. And we actually spend a lot of time in the lab in order to try to mimic that look and feel of natural rock. And then we're looking at the micro design. So when we were looking at, in order to come up with the designs, we were looking at nature, the shell of an oyster and the pulps of a coral for our surface texture design. We're looking at habitat features like for our three-dimensional designs like tide pools and mangroves. And all of those three components working together without compromising the strength and the operational capacity of the concrete. The technology provides ecological solutions and advantages, for example, increased biodiversity and reduction of dominance of invasive species and increased aesthetics, but, and not less important, we also realize that the technology is helping to protect the infrastructure, to make it better, longer lasting and stronger in a process that is called bioprotection, where the skeletons of organisms that grow on the concrete actually makes it stronger over time and reduce the sensitivity to erosion and even to chloride penetration, which could translate to in the long run to reduction in maintenance costs. Let's see how it looks. This is a piece of concrete that has been put in the Mediterranean, and this is how it looks like after 12 months. You don't see the concrete anymore. What you do see is oyster and cube worms and quarrying algae that are swirling on the concrete. If we're going to talk some numbers, so 1 kilometer of our ecological seawall observed 2 tons of CO2 per year, which is equivalent to 100 of adult trees. But the interesting thing is, this is happening, just to give a very short explanation without getting too much into the biology side. Because we're working with nature, then we are seeing a process of calcifying organism that creates an active carbon sink. And this is something that happens throughout the lifespan of the project. So every year it's going to be like planting a forest, and it's not something that happens only once. In 60 or 120 years, the system will keep on turning CO2 into calcium carbonate skeletons in a very healthy process. What it also does is filtering the water. So same thing, 1 kilometer of a seawall is equivalent to almost 1,100 Olympic swimming pools, the capacity of the water, the volume. And this is happening every year throughout the lifespan of the project. Let's see a bit of how it looks like. We're adjusting. This is a technology. It's important for me to say we are not a construction company. We're a technology that can work with different products and different shapes and different applications. What you see here on the left side, there is a control unit. On the right side, there is our unit. This is an armor block 6 years after installation. What you're seeing here is a marine mattress that is being used for shoreline protection and also for the offshore industry. This is the control unit, and our unit is 3 months past installation. What we're seeing here, those are tide pools. Pre-installation and 1 year after installation, you do not see the concrete anymore. We're working in different, for different solutions. If I really try to simplify that, we have the shoreline protection, we have the waterfront infrastructure, so everything that is touching the water, ports, marinas, bridges, tunnels, piles, and then we have the offshore application. As I was saying, marine mattresses, mooring units, and also scar protections. We are working globally. We have over 40 installations, 7 seas, over a decade of, I have to say that this week we got another country. So now it's 11 countries. I'm sorry, the slide is not up to date and we keep on extending. Finally, I want to talk about impact. So the goal here is to change the industry and to have a natural inclusive infrastructure across the globe. Bringing higher biodiversity, better water quality, and active carbon sink, but also to help projects with permitting, with mitigation, and to allow the project to provide a project that is robust, longer lasting, and even low maintenance. This is what we call our win-win solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michal. I'm very happy to hear that you keep on extending. And Roee, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So actually, before starting my, 1 second. Can you hear me?
Perfectly well.
Yeah.
Okay. So just before starting my presentation, each time I'm seeing, and I think the second or third time I'm hearing Michal, it's amazing. It's simply amazing what they're doing. A bit about Greenvibe. Greenvibe eventually is a company dealing with concrete data, and we're saying that we're delivering concrete data like never before. It's quite simple to understand what we're doing. It's a bit more complicated to go into the deep technologies that is supporting it. So a bit about the industry. Each year we're producing around 40 billion tons of concrete. I have to change something so I will be able to see my screen. Excuse me for a second. Okay, I'll use it. So this is the global picture, and it's covering each one of the segment of the industry. And the most important part is that we all need to understand that every concrete works create a massive economic waste, and I'm going to elaborate. If I would like to connect it to the environmental, it's also related to the overuse of cement, which is one of the leading components that is affecting the environment. The basic or the core reason for that is that the industry is still using very, very old methods that they're not, they're not up to date. They're not delivering the right data that is required, and there is a big gap. And eventually, as of today, concrete is kind of an art. Actually, in Michal's presentation, we said to the extreme, but concrete is an art in the negative way, I would say, and Greenvibe is actually making it science in order to do the industry optimization. And this is something important to keep in mind. As I mentioned, there is a massive waste, and we're aiming to reduce up to 50%, or actually more than 50% of the related waste. So it doesn't mean that the cost will be reduced by 50%, but the over waste is going to be reduced. So if we're talking about time, so we're going to cut the time waste on site and in other segments by 95%. All kinds of failures that we're facing on site is going to be cut by 50%, and the cost related to them by 75%, simply because we're going to capture it much before it's usually being captured. Cement redundancy, a real problem in the industry. Today, the over-design, the safety margin of the cement is between 14 to 50%, depends on the specific concrete, and this can be cut by at least 50%. Okay, so we're aware that it's not going to be with zero safety margin, but it can go down to the 7 up to 20%. There is no need to keep such high levels of safety margins. And eventually, you know, if we're looking on the industry in overall, and I think it's a well-known that the industry is over-designed by definition, and we're aiming in the long term to reduce the over-design. Just for the sake of the discussion, over-design means that the building usually is that if it's based on concrete, if it's 50 floors, usually the infrastructure can hold up to 75 or 80 floors. It simply doesn't make any sense. And it's the main cause for that is that starting from the planner to the concrete suppliers and to the GCs, the general constructors, they have no data, so each one of them is adding more and more safety margins. So eventually what we're delivering in a very accurate way is the strength of the concrete in real time, temperature, humidity, and the set of other parameters that are helping all the different segments and different angles of the industry to improve themselves on site and from the supplier side, which means the concrete suppliers. This is a scheme of how the system looks like. We have the sensors, we have the hub that is communicating to the cloud, and then we're calculating all the algorithm, and we're delivering in real time a very accurate data about what's happening in real time inside the concrete. And basically, this is, again, I don't want to dive into the technology too much, and I can relate it to some of the stuff that Maya said at the beginning, because at least one of the technology is coming from some kind of a defense applications that is being used in Israel. But eventually, we're doing a synergy of very deep technologies that the outcome is a very accurate, deep analysis of what's happening in the concrete that you can really trust on and operate according to the data. I was told that I have only 5 minutes, so I will stop at this stage.
And thank you for standing in this time, Roee. Thank you. And I think we are ready to start our Q&A session. So Michal, let's start with you. Michal, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. I'm here.
Oh, okay, great. Just making sure. So let's start. Michal, if you can tell us what exactly kind of projects are you looking for in Germany, and maybe if you have some activities already in the German market, so we'll be happy to hear about that.
All right, thank you for that. So as I said very briefly, again, 5 minutes is a very short time to introduce what we're doing. We have 3 types of applications. One is shoreline protection. The second one is waterfront infrastructure. And the third one is the offshore industry, meaning that there are different opportunities in each of them for projects. So that's one thing. If there is any project of construction, for us, the vision is for every concrete in the water to be ecological. So any concrete for water construction, marine construction, then that is something that we are going to be interested at. Saying that, on the other side, there is the partnerships. We're doing different collaborations and OEMs with companies that already have, I mentioned, we are not a construction company, we are a technology provider, and therefore we know how to adapt our technology to different solutions. And if there are companies who are providing different concrete-based solutions for marine and coastal construction, then we're interested in talking to you. As for what's going on specifically in Germany, we do have a pilot that was installed back in the summer of 2019 in the outside of the port of Hamburg for a few units of tide pools. And that leads me to different activities that we're doing. Today, we are based on ocean construction, and we are working on, we're developing a solution for freshwater. And the port of Hamburg is very unique in a way that it is a freshwater port. So Germany, for us, it's a hub for our next R&D activity.
Great, thank you, Michal. And Roee, back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between Greenvibe sensing and other competitors in this field? Can you elaborate about that?
Yeah, so basically there are more than a few companies aiming to do the same. I think that the main differentiator in it's by the technology. It's a well-known that in the data science that well-known term that it's say that when you're dealing with the term is garbage data. I don't want to use it, but anyway, garbage in, garbage out. So if we're able to have the most accurate data, and this is the main differentiator that is based on our deep technology, and we're using few technologies. So if we're able to deliver the right data, then all the rest is is accurate, is in real time, and you can actually operate based on that. So if you're asking, eventually we're not estimating anything, we're measuring, and we're delivering accurate data that eventually will be very supportive for the different segments.
Great, and can you also tell us about specifically the German markets? What are your interests, or if you already have some activities there?
We do have some discussions also with some German companies. Basically, we're looking for either design partners that would like to operate with us and to see how we can support them in their ongoing activities. As well as, if there is a tier one project or tier one GCs, for example, we'd be happy to operate and to run a pilot or whatever it is to prove our technology.
Okay, thank you. Michal, maybe you would like also to tell us about competition in your field. Is there any, by the way, because it sounds that you're very unique?
So we are unique with what you're doing, but I keep on saying we're playing in three different fields. One is the structural side, the second one is the ecological side, and the third one is about carbon sink. When people ask me who do I compete with gray concrete. If they don't build it ecologically, they're going to build it with one of the other construction companies. Okay,
and maybe also if you want to tell us about next steps in the concrete industry.
So I was starting, thank you. I was starting to say that one of the most exciting things for us, the company in the past 10 years has been focusing on seawater, on oceans. And it's not that it's not going to be a focus, but we're extending our offering into freshwater. And I think in Europe in general, and especially in Germany, there are so many opportunities, rivers, lakes, as I was saying, even seaports that are with freshwater because they're up the stream, that for us, this is the next thing, extending our offering for every concrete in the water to be ecological.
Thank you. Roee, I would, yeah.
Maybe one point, I'm not sure that it was very clear. We believe that based on our technology, if we're talking about the impact and the environmental, we will be able to reduce between 10 to 15% of the usage of cement inside the concrete because of the simply lack of data and then over design and simply to reduce it. So if we're summing up in the global aspect, it's going up to 500 billion tons of cement reduction. It's huge.
Huge. It's huge amount.
Yeah, it's actually we did not start Greenvibe because of the environmental impact, and with the on the fly we found out that the impact is simply outstanding. It's amazing.
And very relevant, of course, to this period of time that we're all talking.
Yeah, but this one you can never manage. It's just a matter of luck, or this is fact. But when starting, we haven't think about the environmental impact, simply because yeah.
We are actually all happy about that. And
definitely.
Actually, you are leading me to the next question, which is more general, but very important to this session. I would like to ask you, Roee, if you ever got the impression that the industry is like too conservative or too much hesitant when it's coming to adopting new, I see you're smiling and I love that, when it comes to adopting new solutions and new techniques.
So I've been told before jumping into this venture that this is a very traditional industry and the companies will not adopt technology. And never in my life I faced such attraction coming from leading companies that are looking for new technology, looking for improve themselves, looking to, from both aspects, from improving their performance on one hand and opening to the environmental impact. So I was under the impression that it's going to be very hard to convince companies to adopt technology. And in fact, it's the opposite. Tier one companies.
Isn't it?
What?
It's quite surprising.
Very surprising. We're getting calls from Japan, from Hong Kong, from North America. Companies are looking for adopting technology. And by the way, if I would like to connect to what Maya said, I think that the first league or the tier one companies in Israel are amazing. And if I can refer to Tidhar and Israel, Canada, and others that eventually we choose them to invest in our company. But all the big companies are looking to adopt technology. It's amazing.
And Michal, what do you say about that?
I can run the party a bit. I wish I would experience that. I can tell about a very, especially when you're talking about less in the offshore and more on when you're talking ports or marina. This is very old-fashioned, traditional, talking to an engineer who's been doing things for 30 or 40 years and don't really want anyone to mess up with their concrete. We have a lot of work in order to show that not only that the concrete is not exposed or weaker, but actually getting stronger over time. And this is part of the slow ramp up of the company. For the first decade, a lot of R&D, a lot of different peer reviews and third parties labs. And by now, when people see the graph and see that there is actually, the concrete is getting stronger, more sealed compared to any control unit, then things are easier. But the beginning, it was not a quick adoption period, if I will say in a very, very modest way.
It's interesting to see, we're talking about the same material, concrete, but we see completely different approaches because we're talking about different industries, of course, the marine one. And
I think it's not the industry as much as what Roee and Greenvibe are bringing is a mirror, is giving a dashboard for what they're doing. They're not questioning what they're doing, they're giving them tools in order to do that better. And what we're coming with is a change, is taking an industry and creating a new standard.
Michal, it's not that we don't have challenges, and eventually some of what we're doing beside the optimization is eventually is also supported by regulation. But I think that the management level in many companies are aware to the fact that you need to adopt technology, either to improve the ongoing operation, but also looking forward about what is the trend and what is the right move to do. So we all have challenges. I think that what you're doing is amazing, not less than that, really. And definitely we're supporting the different value chains of the concrete industry, and this is why the openness for adoption is a bit higher.
I think you said the key word, the magic word that if we're looking at any market, including the German market today, regulation. The more awareness there is, then the more doors that are being opened for us because the bar is different. So if there is anyone on this call who can have any influence to this one, then this is more than welcomed as well.
Thank you, guys. I see that we are running out of time, Simon. I
don't want to be impolite.
So thank you for this really fascinating discussion. I wish you much of success, you too. And thank you, Simon and Elias, for this joint effort in this wonderful event. Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It was a fascinating discussion. Yeah, to the audience, please feel free to approach us or the companies directly for follow-up if you're interested in talking to them directly and talking more about details. Now, I'm very happy to introduce to you Hoang from the German construction tech startup Alcemy. We got to know each other during the last year, and they're doing an amazing job. And we thought it would be great to have such an innovative company in our event to also get insights on the German construction tech ecosystem. What kind of challenges do the German startups face? How do they deal with it? And yeah. Great pleasure to have you here, Hoang, and very much looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, Simon, thank you for having me. I'm gonna try to raise. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Perfectly well, yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Hoang. I am public policy lead at Alcemy, and I'm responsible for communications and our projects with the real estate industry. In my former position, I was responsible for the digitalization and innovation at the German Property Federation, which is the one of the leading umbrella association for the real estate and the construction industry. And there I, for example, initiated a German PropTech platform, a network with established companies, but as well as, of course, startups. And personally, I think the climate crisis is one of the biggest threats to mankind. And that's why I am also member of the German Green Party and member of the district assembly in Berlin. And that's why I would say kind of know the challenges in the urban development regarding sustainability on the one hand and societal needs on the other hand. So today I'm going to give you a short overview about this topic, and the rest, if you have any other questions, you can text me, or if we can discuss this later if we have time for that. Okay, so the first challenge. In Germany, we are facing at the moment the problem that we don't have enough housing for all the people. So we have the rise of rents in many parts of Germany, especially in the major cities where housing shortage is particularly pressing. And I, for instance, live in Berlin, and I see every day the dramatic changes in the housing market. And to counter this problem, the new traffic light coalition in Germany wants to build 400,000 apartments every year. And with this, to ensure that affordable housing is available in major cities. On the other hand, we have, as all of you already mentioned, we have this problem of the climate crisis and with the ecological dimension here. We all know that the construction industry is responsible for 38% of global CO2 emission. And the path for Europe is clear, that we want to be climate neutral by 2050. And for this, the industry has to take their responsibility really seriously, and also the concrete and the cement industry. Only to give you a short glimpse on that, cement and concrete are responsible for 8% worldwide emissions, with around 2.8 gigatons of CO2 emission. To make it more visible, I often mentioned if this industry would be a country, we would be the third largest emitter only after China and the US. And in the future, this will not change because this material will still be needed. So we have to work with this material. Concrete is the most widely used man-made material in existence. And in the last centuries, we poured it into buildings, roads, bridges, skyscrapers. And every year we pour 4.6 billion tons of cement. This is also a comparison which is quite interesting. Every month we build the city of New York newly. And the secret of concrete success in the end, is it low price and wide availability? But first of all, let's take a closer look of what concrete and cement actually are. Roee from Greenvibe already mentioned this, but I think it's kind of interesting because for me in the beginning of this job, it was kind of difficult to differentiate cement and concrete. So cement is a gray powder, is produced by burning the natural resource limestone in a kiln at I think 1,400 degrees, and mix it with supplementary cementitious materials such as slag, fly ash, and other materials. And in the end, this cement is the most important part of concrete because it gives the strength to this material. So it works like a glue. If you then mix the cement with aggregates, sand, water, and SCMs, you get the concrete, this wonderful liquid material. And one important aspect to mention is that 90% of concrete CO2 is polluted in the cement making process itself. And it's only limited possible to decarbonize this process completely. And that's why, for example, Bill Gates stated in his book that this industry is one of the most difficult one to decarbonize. But it's in the end clear we need the material and we urgently need more innovation in this particular industry. And that's exactly why we have Alcemy, or why Alcemy exists. We are a Berlin-based green tech startup founded in 2018 by Leo, whose family owns cement and concrete plants in Germany, and Robert, who builds the machine learning team at Flixbus. And with the combination of machine learning expertise and concrete and cement knowledge, we want to accelerate the decarbonization of this industry. And our goal is, I would say, ambitious, but we think it's still achievable. We want to reduce cement's CO2 by 1 gigaton. So what is our approach with that? As I mentioned before, the clinker is responsible for most of the concrete CO2. So our solution is, sounds simple, but is to move from the left side to the right side, to reduce the cement clinker and to substitute it with SCM, such as slag, fly ash, or unburned limestone powder, which have a really low carbon level. So you might ask now, if that's so easy, why is not everybody doing that? Why are the producers still using concrete with such a high amount of cement clinker? The answer is more difficult than easy. One reason, or the main reason, is that the less clinker you use, which is the glue in the concrete, as I mentioned, the higher the effort needed to produce cement and concrete. So substituting clinker means that concrete will be more sensible and harder to produce. So with the manual production today, and Roee also mentioned that, will be not possible to produce low carbon concrete. So the consequence will be that we need more employees to monitor this process. This will lead to more expensive concrete, which approximately will be 2 to 3 times more than the price of concrete today. And we'll have like a lot of quality requirements, high quality requirements. And in the end, the consequences for the market is that it will be not attractive for the real estate industry because they are so cost driven. And we want to change that with Alcemy. So our integrated production control enables automation and steady quality in an increasingly demanding environment. By this, we reduce this additional cost associated with the production of low carbon products, making them more attractive for the entire markets. So let's have a closer look. We have a data-driven automation technology which runs in the cement and concrete plants 24/7, from the kiln, which you can see on the left side, to the mixing truck, which is on the road to the construction site. And based on existing data quality, we train a machine learning model that predicts the quality parameters such as plane or strength during the production. And to ensure a steady quality, we deliver an optimized fineness parameter to the control station and directly to the expert systems. So we think that with these tools, we can enable the staff to produce better, more cost efficient, and at scale. Our added value, I think, is quite obvious. We can improve the quality by up to 35%, and the employees can gain unique insights into their production. On an average level, our customers can save up to 400,000 euros by reducing the clinker factor and the grinding energy, and they can transform their portfolio to more CO2 or more low carbon concrete. And in the end, we deeply think that this is the most affordable and the most easiest way to decarbonize this industry and to set a new standard for low carbon concrete. So in the end, let's decarbonize this industry together, not just in the future, but already today. So thank you. This was a short overview. I'm sure that I wasn't able to talk about the political dimension, but we can talk maybe.
Yeah, let's talk about it simply in the discussion. Thank you very much, Hoang. Fascinating technology. Yeah, tell us a bit about the challenges. The challenges you're facing in Germany with regards to regulation. Roee also mentioned it already. There are very high safety margins required or simply implemented just because due to a lack of knowledge. How do you deal with that? Because I know you put great efforts as a startup in this direction as well. Not only in the technology, but also in making sure there's a political and regulatory environment to make the implementation actually happen.
Yeah, like I think most of you know, Germany is known for their bureaucracy and their sometimes this I would say slowness in innovation, and this is actually what we are facing with the cement in the cement and concrete industry. So if you want, for example, if you want to use a concrete which has a small clinker factor, you often need a special permit because the cement and concrete norms, they are like limiting our options at the moment. And that's why also limiting the innovation potential. This commissions that could change the cement norm or could adapt new recipes into the cement norms are really slowly. So you normally would need I think 5 to 10 years to change this norm in Germany and also in Europe. So our approach is to still talk to the associations, for example, the German Cement Association, which is the leading association in this field, and also to talk to them to mention our problems, and also to say that all of us know that the CO2 price in, for example, with the ETS, the emission trade system in Europe, and also the climate crisis is happening, and the industry has to transform. But at the moment, the industry is still at this road. Yeah, we will have in the future this carbon capture and storage utility technology where we can take out the CO2 and put it somewhere else. And we think that this might be the ultima ratio, but this is not the solution for all. So we think we should try every possible way first to do that, and that's is needed to talk to the politics, to talk to the associations, but also to talk to the real estate industry. Because, and then I'm ending with my monologue here, because in the beginning we thought, okay, if we enable the producers to make more low carbon concrete, we would solve the problem, right? But in the end, nobody was asking for this product. So we talked to construction companies and project developers, and they said us, yeah, it is an important issue for us. We have to report sustainability criteria to our investors, but still it is too expensive, this kind of concrete. So we thought, okay, now we have to talk to the value chain after concrete and cement, and we initiated a project with the project developer Edge, where we are working with them and consult them or advise them with our low carbon concrete or our understanding of this product.
Thank you very much. Can you before we have to move on with an eye to the clock, can you say one last word on the role of associations that associations play in Germany with regard to these regulatory issues, and maybe some predictions? Are you optimistic about changing regulations, or what do you think will happen during the next 1 to 2 years in this sector in Germany?
Okay, 1 to 2 years is like really fast, but I think I'm really optimistic about that. At the moment, there is pressure on the authorities to change, for example, this process with the special permits. So at the moment, as I mentioned, if you want to use a like a clinker cement with a low clinker factor, you need a special permit for that. And we talked to the authorities, and they told us, yeah, there is pressure on us, so we might like accelerate this process at the moment. And at the moment, we are advising one of our customers to go for this process of a special permit with a cement which has like 50% unburned limestone, and which will decrease like the CO2 again. But in the end, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes. But yeah, I'm quite optimistic that with the new government this will slightly change, and we will have like I think we will be better in 4 years.
Thank you very much, Hoang. Great pleasure to listen to your insights. You also said in the preparation you would be open to discussions also with the companies that presented today. And from my perspective, there could be some synergies, some complementary aspects with different technologies. And let's see, maybe we can initiate here a follow-up discussion, because I think the German market is obviously unique in a way. It's big also, and but lots of efforts and knowledge with regards to regulation and associations have to be spent in order to make make So thank you very much for your insights, and feel free to contact him or through me and us. And yeah, let's move to the second panel. Looking forward very much. Zachi, welcome.
Hi.
Great. Yeah, Zachi, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself, and let's use the last 20 minutes as efficiently.
Wisely. Let's use it wisely. So hi everyone, good afternoon. Estelle, Simon, thanks for this great opportunity to host the panel. So a few words about ConTech. ConTech is a construction innovation center based here in Tel Aviv. I founded it exactly 5 years ago with 3 main stakeholders. The first one is the Israeli government through the Ministry of Housing and Construction, Ministry of Economy, as well as the Association of Israeli Builders, where each side brings its own point of view to this, interesting initiative. When we've started back then, 5 years ago, I mean, people were staring at me, not understanding what do we do? What's construction tech about? And probably about 5 to 10 startups dealing with it. Today, thanks God, it's about 250. Maya presented previously the map, so it's growing pretty nicely, rapidly. We're focusing in 3 main pillars. The first one is continuing building this ecosystem through a long list of industry events, like this kind of events, global international events, Construction 4.0, which we had twice, and this year we'll have the third event towards the end of this year, an incubation program which we're running on a yearly basis. Jonathan is one of our alumni, we're working closely with corporates in different verticals of the industry. Might be general contractors, might be real estate developers, construction equipment providers, materials providers, infrastructure, utilities, software, and some others. So that's really in a nutshell. And I'm really happy to host here today 2 old friends, as well as pillars of the Israeli ConTech ecosystem, Jonathan and Tal. Both were here long time ago, since we've started and running this long run. You know, it's when building an ecosystem, it's a long run. It's a marathon. So you're running with these good people for a long time. And we decided to focus on design and planning technologies, since, you know, this is the beginning of the life cycle. And if you're gonna do things as they should be done at the beginning, the rest of the process will be much better. And I was dealing with these issues for a long time, you know, since I was a young engineer dealing with infrastructure, road planning. I was facing these issues of automation, and that was a long time ago. And I'm not dealing with planning anymore for a long time. But I think the issues are quite the same, and it's all about making this process automated, optimized. And both companies, both entrepreneurs today will speak about that. We'll start with Jonathan, the co-founder and CEO of StructurePal. Jonathan, the stage is yours. Thanks for being here.
So Tzachi, thank you very much. So my name is Jonathan Lazowski. I'm the founder and CEO of StructurePal. And yes, I'm going to speak about concrete once again, but from a different angle. And that is, the construction industry is using too much concrete as an overall consensus. But if we be more precise, it uses more than it should. And it comes to the fact that our engineers are over-designing the structures that hold our buildings. And it's not because they're bad structural engineers, it's because they don't have any other way. And together with our solution and the AI we've developed, we are gonna help them to solve that problem of over-design. So, yeah, you heard before, the worst industry when it comes to CO2 emissions, and concrete is the most used one in the industry and construction anyway. So I'll just go into our mission. Our mission is to try and reduce 50% of the emissions that the concrete industry is emitting as for today. How are we going to do it? So before the how, let's talk about why. So if we talk about structural engineers and the fact that these guys are the ones responsible for designing and over-designing the structures, we can look at three main parameters. The first one is the fact that we have less structural engineers by the day. That's first. Second of all, we have more buildings by the day, specifically residential buildings. And if we look at those buildings, you can say that 35% of the cost of those buildings is the concrete structure. Now, if I'm a structural engineer, or I have an office of structural engineering, and I have more project to design, I don't have enough manpower, and I'm buried this load of cost. And beside that, I have a top of 4 weeks to provide the preliminary design. I have to find some let's say, ways to do it quicker. And those forms of all kind of, let's say, copy-paste techniques and office standards that didn't change for the last 30 years are most the solutions that I can give, because I don't have any other way. And that leads me as a structural engineer to over-design in numbers that can steep up to 30% extra reinforced concrete. And that's crazy, because that not only makes a lot of CO2 emissions, and I'll talk about it in a second, but it actually impacts my clients, the developer, and it adds roughly between 7 and 10% extra funding to the project. And I wouldn't even go to the point where it creates friction with the project managers and architects and so on. So what are we offering here? Well, we're offering in two aspects. First is the efficiency of the design, and second of all is the quality of the output of that design. So what our users will get with our software, first of all, 50% design automation. That means from the overall work, the preliminary design that takes 50% of their work will be automated. Second of all, we will never replace their software. We will integrate into their software. I have to say that from the 10 years that I'm in this world that is called construction tech, I have never seen a good replacement of software. That means just look at how much it takes us to implement BIM and replace 2D drawings. So that's only one example. So our choice was to integrate into their own software, and by that creating a basically no learning curve procedure. Now, after that, structural engineers will be able to output a design that has 15% less in reinforced concrete and cost reduction of that concrete. I'll just say reducing concrete by itself is not the only thing that reduces the cost, but actually taking into consideration the construction methods and regulations. But the most interesting thing here is that by reaching those numbers, we can actually reach almost 30% of CO2 reductions just by using our software. Comparing, of course, to a regular design done just by a human. So how it works, as we mentioned, integration, not replacing. So we integrate into the BIM software used by the structural engineer, into the finite element software used by the structural engineers. And our software basically works in the background. So the first thing, the structural engineer will get the design from the architect and will start working. But in that moment, he will stop. Instead of drafting, instead of wasting 4 weeks of work on drafting and searching for a solution, a structural design, he'll change his position to specifying the challenge, not drafting the solution. In other words, the structural engineer will specify within our platform the architectural limitations, structural loads, costs of material, types of material, different construction codes and methods, and if there are CO2 regulations or credits that can apply, even that. And just in a click of a button, our AI will take all of that data and will start automatically generating designs over and over. But the thing is that the engineer won't see that. It's going to happen in the background, and the AI will evaluate every design that it automatically generates in 2 terms. First, is it structurally sane? That is it working with the code, the regulations, and the loads? And at the same time, what is the cost of that? Cost in cash, cost in credits, of course, and in volume. Eventually, after between 16 and 300 iterations, that will take roughly 30 minutes for the AI, it will converge to the best solution. And the thing here, which is very interesting, it's not only going to suggest the engineer what it should do, it will actually output a detailed BIM model for the engineer, a detailed FEM model, and a full report depicting all the elements, the price, and how much CO2 was reduced. Important to say that the BIM model and the FEM models are the 2 models that will put the engineer in ease. That means that the solution we provided is sane, is working, and works with the codes, and it can feel safe when using that model. In terms of business model, we're doing it pretty easy, just asking our client to pay by the square meter. At the moment, $1, that's it, and they can optimize their solution. We're working with top-tier construction group and structural engineers. We're tackling a market that is 850 million square meters big, and we're venturing into high-rises and skyscrapers as well. In terms of accomplishments, Ed Sahi mentioned, we are alumni of ConTech and another, and Inventec, which is one of the leading, I'll say, accelerators in the north of Israel, where we are. We've been awarded one of the 50 top top ConTech startups of 2020. And not only that, because we have one leg, of course, in construction tech and one leg in the climate tech area, we just been awarded first prize in the Renewable Energy Conference here in Israel that happens once a year. We actually managed to defeat 9 other startups from climate tech industries. In terms of traction, we're working with the 3 biggest construction groups, first tier in Israel, Shikunu, Binu, Shapir, and Ashdar from the Ashram Group. And now we're venturing into the British market and to the Emirate market, and we love to put our first steps into the German as well. And the most interesting thing about it is the leading team is composed of, yes, structural engineers, all of us, but with one small change. Not only structural engineers, but actually programmers and AI enthusiasts. That means we have one leg in the industry and another leg in the technology. And we're actually the client creating his own solution. Our investors, again, 2 biggest construction companies in Israel and some financial investors as well so far. Proud of having in the advisory board of Professor Fazak, one of the leading names in structural engineering and digitalization, and Mr. Eli Rodman, who is the local CEO of Autodesk in Israel, and Avi Hakim, which is an engineer with 40 years of experience, actually taking the role of being the worst client we can ever have. And if I can summarize my presentation in 5 years, this is the number I'm trying to say that I will reduce. That means 1% of CO2 emissions, not by ourselves, of course, but by actually encouraging competition and by encouraging the industry to find other solutions rather than us. But yes, we want structured PAL to be the catalyst of this industry in terms of reducing CO2 emissions. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. And I'll have to be patient with my questions, because we're going to pass the mic to Tal Friedman, CEO and founder of Voltstruct. Tal, the stage is yours. We'll save the questions for later on.
You're on mute, Tal?
Still muted.
All right, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. So yeah, thank you very much for hosting me. A lot of familiar faces here. It's a great honor to be here, and I've also been living in Germany in the last couple of years, so very exciting times seeing how this develops, and I'll get straight to it. So as Zahi mentioned, I'm the CEO of Voltstruct, and we're talking about the construction 4.0 age, moving from manual construction to AI and robotics. Now, if we look at the industry as a whole, a bird's eye perspective, we're going to see millions of buildings that will be built and renovated over the next 10 years, where construction is responsible for 40% of global CO2 emissions. This means that sustainability equals scalability. We can't talk about a sustainable kindergarten, a sustainable city, right? Or even a sustainable country. We've got to talk about how to transform the whole industry in order to make an impact. And it should be said that construction on its own has the ability to solve the global crisis, as we're talking about 40% of the global CO2 emissions. So all of these can be solved with digital industrialization, just like we've seen in other fields. The Industry 4.0 age is allowing us to save time, cost, and CO2 by standardizing and automating construction, working in controlled environments, and that is by all means the key to solving the problem. So if we look at the automotive world, we can see that 1921 to 2021, which is already 22, well, cars have become 10 times cheaper, faster, and greener. The other way of looking at it is to say that buildings have become 10 times more expensive, as everything is relative. So that's one way of looking at it. And if we compare that to the construction world, we can see that the labor has gradually changed into something that is completely different than the beginning days. In construction, however, not much has changed. We still have manual labor. The labor costs are rising, less and less skilled labor. And the key, of course, is to look at how we plan buildings. So the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, said supposedly Einstein. And yet, when we design the same buildings, we're bound to get the same results. And this is, of course, in line with what Jonathan was showing before. So 99% of the buildings that we build are still manual. They are too polluting, and worst of all, they're repetitive. So we're creating more and more of them, talking about building faster and doing more of the same. But it's all a question of how we actually create buildings that reach the goals that we described. And again, it all starts from planning. So how do we plan today? We see that in thousands of years, planning methods have not essentially changed. We're still talking about pure geometry, basically. So it's digital, yes, it's 3D, yes, but by the time we're finished designing a building, we only have a geometrical output in line with statutory regulations, but nothing to do with manufacturing cost and CO2. This is only accounted in the last 20%, which means we can't change anything, which means it's unfeasible to talk about industrialized manufacturing if you hadn't designed for it in the first place. So The end of an action starts with a thought. If we plan for industrialized construction, we could actually do it. As I said, design for manufacturing and assembly is the key. This has been done in the automotive world, in aerospace, in furniture. It means that we're designing for the screw level. It means that we have basically everything, including the manufacturing process, embedded within the design. And as they like to say in architecture, form follows function. We have the functions embedded, and therefore we can create smarter designs. The way Fullstruct works basically is allowing the planners to not know everything about manufacturing, about sustainability, because they'll never be able to know all that. That's knowledge of tens of different consultants per project. And we can't change people, essentially. We can only create tools that bridge the gap with the knowledge and the skill sets that they have and the goals they want to reach. So what Fullstruct allows you to do is basically work on very minimal drawings where they could just focus on planning, and then an AI scanning process basically converts that model into a model that's built for manufacturing. It takes into account cost and time, and of course, sustainability, because when we talk about smart materials, we have to ask, how do we embed them in planning stages in order to see their benefit? And I can tell you from having experience also in selling materials to the market, if you're not able to show the benefit in planning stages, you're never going to be able to sell a product, right? And I say that with regard to smart concretes, smart facades. So all of those have to be shown for as the direct value. And this is what helps make the right decisions. So what we do is basically create a platform that bridges between architecture, engineering, and real estate, where the output is a BIM, real world system model, as opposed to standard geometry, bill of materials that is derived from that, and essentially giving the output of a financial analysis, ROI, which is the driving factor of all of this, because if we don't see an ROI, there is no way we can talk about sustainability. A part of sustainability is also being able to provide a good ROI, and that's where the scalability comes in. So we can merge with all different types of platforms, which is one of the biggest problems in the industry. We have an agnostic platform where we can communicate with different types of formats, either as an input or as an output. So obviously we don't want and cannot replace all the other software, but gradually we can reduce the dependency on other platforms and closed formats. Just to give an example of what this looks like, we start out with something like this, and then in a couple of clicks, we arrive at a finished model, which already has designs in it, which of course are adaptable and can also give us different suggestions and variations where we can kind of swipe to the side and choose the best one for us. Our vision is to design, to bridge between the design and the sourcing, where on the one hand sits the designer, on the other hand are sitting the actual suppliers of the materials, the systems, the contractors. They're the ones accountable for what the designers are designing. And that's the missing link that we have today. So just to talk about the advantages, because my time is running out, we can design 20 times faster. And I'd be happy to show a demo to anybody who wants to see. Reduce CO2 levels, reduce cost, and increase ROI, eventually bridging the gap between design and manufacturing. So that was my presentation. Here you can see just examples of the things that we can design in no time with the software as opposed to standard methods. And of course, that just shows you the ability of how to break the box when you have embedded design for manufacturing. So I welcome you all to join the revolution, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Tal. Fascinating. I like that Mesopotamia slide. It's true.
We are in the Middle East, Tzachi.
Yeah, we're in the Middle East, and it's true. You must admit that. I mean, nothing has really changed in the design process.
So before we come to an end, unfortunately I have to hop in. Our time has run out. I mean, maybe we can spend some three more minutes. Probably some of our audience might leave. We will upload the recording shortly and provide you a link, and also publish it. So these discussions can be reviewed at a later stage as well. Maybe one one question to both companies before we wrap up today's event, so we don't spend too much time.
Yeah, okay, so I'll ask the same question for both. You're kind of, especially you, Tal, changing the supply chain, disrupting the supply chain in here, and you, Jonathan, you're kind of threatening the concrete, the cement companies by reducing their sales. How do you see that from a business perspective? How do Tal, in your case, how do the contractors and the material providers will interact into that change involved at the beginning of the process, like moving all the decisions, or not all, a lot of the decisions to the beginning of this process? How do you see it?
Okay, so firstly, I think it's a great question, and the key question, right, is how do you start from the top, basically? These contractors and providers are used to competing for tender where everything is already defined and they have to match the actual request, where now they're doing the opposite. They are basically creating the use cases and saying, let us show that in your project. So to answer that, I have to say we work with a couple of large manufacturers and they love the idea. Well, both. Well, the types that have added value products love the idea. The ones that don't like it at all, and they think this can only create a disruption and strengthen the competition. If just for example, if we're talking about concrete, there's this new trend of CO2 reduced concrete, which John Kerry was actually mentioning yesterday, saying that people are using it because it's better. Well, I beg to differ on that, right? You have to show why it's better. You have to show that you get, let's say, green points. And you have to also make the cost analysis. It's not enough to say we're the best, because you're competing against people for a very low tender. So if they describe the tender for the lowest common denominator, it's going to be impossible for you as a developer to even get what you asked for, because once the contract is signed, they just go by the contract. So that's what they love, the ability to put their let's say, regulations and define the best fit products within the design process, because that's a contract and that means you're actually going to get what you ordered.
Thanks. Jonathan, your perspective about that? You're muted.
Sorry, yeah. So just to go back to my presentation, if you recall, we were part of the 50 leading construction tech in 2020. The ones who actually gave us that prize is Cemex, which is a cement manufacturer, which is kind of weird. But if you look at it at a different perspective, that cement is threatened by CLT, steel, and other construction materials, their aim here is to become from the bad boy of the industry to the attractive boy. That means the attractive part of the industry in terms that they want to stay attractive, in terms that they will keep using concrete, no matter how much concrete. Please use our concrete. So reducing the amount of concrete and mitigating the CO2 emissions, as Tal said, with concrete will keep the concrete industry alive. That's why it's not a problem for them, both approaches. So that's my take there. And I think we don't have any more time, so I'll end there.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion. I'll be happy to develop it on a follow-on event. All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a lot to everyone. Thank you to our hosts, our panel hosts, and to all the companies that presented. Yeah, it was a great pleasure to have you all here. Thank you also to our audience for staying with us, although we exceeded our time limit. So thank you, Hila from the Israel Export Institute, and Sachi for hosting the panels. And thank you very much, Maya, for this interesting keynote. Yeah, let's have a follow-up. This question will become more and more relevant in Germany during the next years, and we should continue the discussion. We are thinking about further events like this already, and of course we want to dive into deeper discussions. But this means also we want to discuss with the industry here. So to our audience, if you're willing and looking for discussion partners, please approach us. We'll be happy to initiate and organize further discussions, because obviously implementation to be done is a long way to go. So we want to facilitate this from our side and do our very best. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend to the ones in Israel who are going to the weekend today already. And we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing it. Great
Dankeschön, Simon.
Bye-bye.